Berrit, and I'm your host. I'm a corporate strategist, problem solver, social entrepreneur, writer, mom of two, and passionate for growth at home, in business, and in my community. A lot has happened since the beginning of the year. It's no surprise that my word of the year is strength. After formally launching my advisory business in October and launching a new baby podcast in December dedicated to AI experiments, I'm delighted to relaunch the Make Space for Growth podcast. This podcast amplifies the voices of women entrepreneurs and leaders, celebrating the strength and resilience it takes to thrive both in business and in life. I believe that women can be at the forefront of shaping industries and their journeys, marked by adaptability, bold decisions, and perseverance. And this is a story to be heard and recognized. This podcast embraces the full self because true success extends through the professional and the personal. By sharing these stories, we hope to inspire and reshape the narrative around leadership. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Marta Palmeiro, co-founder of Student Finance, to the podcast. Born in Lisbon, Marta is a seasoned finance professional with over a decade of experience in investment banking at Credit Suisse, where she developed expertise in capital markets and financial services. Her journey took a transformative turn when she transitioned from traditional finance to the world of fintech and education. With a passion for innovation and impact, Marta co-founded Student Finance, a platform focused on career mobility by helping individuals upskill for opportunities in high-demand sectors such as technology, artificial intelligence, engineering, and the green economy. Leveraging AI to map in-demand skills, the platform partners with top education providers to close skill gaps and offers flexible, success-based financing options to students. Marta's leadership in the fintech space is underpinned by her academic pursuits at MIT and the University of Oxford, where she specialized in fintech and blockchain strategy. Beyond her work at Student Finance, she's an active angel investor and a co-founder of Portugal Fintech, showcasing her commitment to fostering innovation and growth in the tech ecosystem. Marta's story is one of resilience, vision, and the power of aligning financial solutions with societal needs at the core. Let's dive into her inspiring journey and the impact she's making through Student Finance. Marta, welcome to the Make Space for Growth podcast. Before we talk business, let me ask you, what was your favorite thing to do as a child, and what did you want to do when you grew up?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation with you. I was not one of those kids that always knew what they wanted to do. Actually, I went into banking because I had a boyfriend in London and I wanted to go to London, and this opportunity came along, right? So I was obviously within my sphere of interest. It is kind of what materialized and what happened at that time, and I'm super grateful for that. I think when I was a kid, I used to really like playing the adult, so like role modeling the what life would be when I grew up. So a lot around family, going to work, solving problems, and so I think obviously a little bit of the entrepreneurship side was there. I also love to read, so very kind of connected to the interest of learning, knowing more from others, etc. But I would say those are kind of maybe the two sides that I remember the most.
So you started your career, now we know why you started your career in London and in finance. And then you've still had a long stint, which we share a little bit of that in common. And then so how do you feel like that part of the career prepared you to a little bit of what we're talking about here today, which is the entrepreneurial part and the launching a business part?
It prepared me immensely, right? So I started my career in investment banking in the capital market side at Credit Suisse. I was there for 10 years. So like you were saying, a very long period of time. I think it's worth highlighting that banking, when we started, was tech now, right? It was the sexy place to be in.
Yeah.
And the quality of the people that I think we had kind of the pleasure to learn from was outstanding.
Amazing,
and investment banks had, I hope that they still do, but at the time they certainly had the approach that nobody's being hired by the skills that they have in advance, right? They really hire for talent potential, and you are really supposed to learn on the job and with the tools. So when I started there were people that came from philosophy, psychology,
I
obviously
mean, I
also
had
media
someone
planning, but
I had someone with me that studied Latin, right? And I was like, how did you end up in M&A? How is that possible?
exactly. And then you have people with kind of those backgrounds doing derivatives trading, M&A, but I think that is kind of really liberating in the sense that you really understand from the start that they are giving you the tools to learn and to succeed, and you really just need to be very open on that learning journey, on grabbing people. So, you know, at the time we used to spend a lot of time on the trading floor, one day with equity derivatives trader, the other day with the research. Like, so you were really acquiring a lot of wisdom from the people around. It was a very creative space, right? So at Credit Suisse was it's known to be the kind of the entrepreneurial of the investment bank. So we were problem solvers. Like it is a solutions bank, right? So people would come to us and say, like, I need to solve this problem. I need to edge this exposure that I have. I need to whatever, create these investments, and we would be very creative in finding those solutions. So I think a little bit of that entrepreneurial side is also connected on that. Okay, throw a problem at me, and I'll figure out how to go around it. And accepting that even at the time, so in a very structured investment bank, it was absolutely fine to say, I don't know, I will figure it out, I'll come back to you. So this was actually something that I was taught to say recurrently to clients, and that was absolutely okay, right? It's not that.
Yeah.
On the other side, I spend a lot of time reading research. You see the macro, so understanding how, I actually think working in investment bank turns out to be a very big course on macroeconomics and how the world functions, right? And I think we get that, right? When I'm now running my business, it's very easy for me to connect the dots, but not only connect the dots, but see how things influence each other, right? That cascade of, you know, interest rates are raising now, and these are, so that allows me to think a couple of steps ahead, and I believe mitigate a lot of risk, but also explore the opportunity. So, and that is absolutely from banking and from reading and trying to explain to people large amount of research on an ongoing basis and how the world is going, the trends, because on the capital markets, it's a lot about that, right?
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about the business in just a second, but if you take a step back, what do you feel like was the personal experience or the value that really shaped your decision to go and co-found Student Finance?
So my transition to student finance was super natural. So in 2000, so within these 10 years, Credit Suisse actually was from London. I moved from started in London and moved to Madrid, and then we moved to Lisbon, still within Credit Suisse. Then around, like, this was 2016, and at the time you were seeing like the first startups in the Portuguese ecosystem. This was like the early days of Startup Portugal, Startup Lisboa. And particularly on the fintech side, it was absolutely impossible for an early stage founder to sit with a banking CEO in kind of Iberia space. Like, this would just completely not happen. And so we started having contact with some emerging startups, like really pre-seed, seed stage, that were coming out, and that we invested and we supported them getting those first clients. So we would kind of sit in meetings with them and C-levels and boards of banks to try to obviously get the products out into market and help the sale process. And so that was kind of the first step, was starting angel investing, knowing within the ecosystem. Also at that time, I co-founded the Portugal Fintech. So it's a non-profit organization to really support the fintechs getting access to academia, clients, investors, etc. Right? So not to make money, really just to support the ecosystem and foster that. So I started knowing a lot of people through Portugal Fintech. I started knowing a lot of people being involved. So actually, we created some programs with the regulators, CMVM, Bank of Portugal, etc. So I was getting deep into fintech ecosystem in Portugal, and so it was very natural. I knew the people. My co-founder now at Student Finance, he previously built Uniplaces. He was leaving his executive position. And so it was just like very natural for us to start having some conversations around the future of education, the future of work, what they were doing there at Uniplaces, because they play on student accommodation. It was very like the education side that was on his mind. but how we would connect this to what the world was needing. And it was obvious at the time that there was a huge skills gap, particularly in terms of engineering talent, right? So the world was not growing faster. The companies were not getting to the next stage because they could not get enough engineering firepower, right? And so that's, I think, the core foundational idea behind student finance, which is, okay, we will help people get access to these engineering trainings by financing their education through a model that it's called income share agreements, where people just start paying once they get a job earning above a certain threshold. So at the end of the day, we are really absorbing the placement risk and the downside risk for people to make transitions into kind of the tech world.
So you describe this transition, kind of the stars aligned, and actually the education space was also ripe for this concept to develop. And so how did you turn that vision, right? Because it's great, so many founders have a vision, and then when execution starts, it doesn't quite go there. How did it work for you and your co-founder, and how did you turn that vision into reality?
Yeah, just maybe one step ago. I think when we think the stars align, is more that one thing led to the other. And so when I started the journey, or when I go through the journey, is that I'm thinking like the end game is I want to found a company. It's really just start doing the next steps that feel very natural in my areas of interest, right? So when you see like investing was very natural to what I wanted to do. Then founding Portugal FinTech was just like, how can I add value on a very much kind of a give first basis? But it was really just like exploring and I think expanding networks and relationships around my areas of interest. This is what led to all of this journey at the end.
Yeah,
at the end of
the
the
stars
day, right?
never really align entirely, but it's more you made them align
yes,
over time, and the
exactly.
market also was in a place where that could work, right? Because sometimes yours align, but the market don't, right?
Yes, but that is about how we also position the business to
Yeah.
the market cycle, and that is something actually quite interesting to chat in a little. But my transition was smoothed out, or I think made easier, because obviously I had a co-founder who was a second time entrepreneur, right? So when we started student finance, I had by my side someone who actually had done this before, right? And when I say had done this before is because I think we tend to really think about the big things, right? The funding rounds and all of that. But I think the hardest, it's even the step before, is, okay, now that I'm stuck at home doing research for 3 months, and how do we get the first client? How do we take it to the next to the next level? Like that is not natural. And I think many of us that come from kind of very structured backgrounds, you're used to have resources, you're used to having that early stage, is very uncomfortable, right? It's very uncomfortable to go to a place where nothing has structure, nothing has resources, that you're doing everything.
Everything that needs to be done by you.
Yeah, well, the things that you feel like years down the line, I still do a bunch of everything and what needs to be done. But you need to learn how to make progress within that lack of structure. And I would say that was maybe the first block. But then it's just like small steps. When we decided this is definitely the idea we want to go for, this was starting to emerge in the US, right? So there were some validation points on the model coming from the US market. A couple of companies starting to emerge in Germany, small things, but so there were some indicators that the timing was right on a macro level. And that's why I go back to the research and how I see the world. It was absolutely perfect in the sense that it was absolutely clear that we needed to create more engineering talent. There were not enough people, so making people reskill and get to this transition was something that on a macro level was absolutely needed. So the downside from that perspective was highly mitigated. But then it was, okay, how do we get from 0 to 1, right? And so we started, and something that I tell recurrently is that when we had our first client, so even before we had any funding raised, we went to a couple of schools and we told them, like, we're thinking about building this company. If we build this company, will you work with us? And so we had these kind of letters of intent, which legally they are not binding, they are not anything, but they are actually the proof point. And so we had maybe 5 or 6 of these letters from some, quite good, credible schools saying, definitely, if you build this company, we will want to operate with you. We took this back to investors and said, like, guys, there is obviously proof point that this is needed. obviously pitched the why this business had made a lot of sense and had a place in, like, the why now was also very strong, right? Because of that. And so we raised our pre-seed rounds and kind of took it on from there.
What were some of your biggest challenges along the way, and then, some milestones that you're actually proud of that you've
Which,
achieved along the way?
yeah, you see, funding is actually not it was not, I would say, the toughest part, but actually for us it's obviously because Mariano was a serial entrepreneur, but also for me, funding and money, it's something that it's very within my comfort zone, right? So that part, I would say, within our journey, and I know for a lot of companies and startups that is not the case, right? For us, that was not the difficult part, right? The difficult part was not raising money or, exposing yourself to investors. Also, something that you hear a lot, like women entrepreneurs, like we are used to, you and I, and on talking about money, closing big deals in this kind of men's world. So that is something for me that was absolutely in my comfort zone, happy days. And so that was not the tough part. But something that was definitely against us was that we were operating a model that was new. So you don't have track record. So
Yeah.
when on one side, highly regulated, capital intensive business, which is something that 90% of investors will tell you no
No
go, right?
thanks.
I don't want to touch that. That is, which is fine when you know that in advance, right? It's just like, I know that this is not a fit for 90% of the investors, right? It's like, adjust expectations. That is fine, right? So for us, it was very important to speak with two types of people whenever we were either raising or getting partners for the business. People that care about the impact side, and that was important. And on the other side, people that has some knowledge around lending, fintech, and financial markets, because that is a halfway for them to understand that the risk was
The
highly
type of
was
risk.
highly mitigated, right? Because that is, I would say, the tough part. But so raising the initial pools of debt without having any track record in the market, and with a product that, so our product typically has 3 to 4 years of repayment cycle, so it would take us some time to have track record to raise a lot of money. So how do we match the scalability of the business with the understanding that we need to obviously raise money to create it? So again, the chicken and egg for us was more on the lending side of the business due to the lack of track record generically in the market, right? It's not student finance didn't have track records, that it doesn't exist in the world. The model is absolutely new. We are starting to see the initial touch points in the US, but we are still to see validations on that. And what we did do to mitigate that, so actually we closed the guarantee with the European Investment Fund. And so we tried again to touch this back to how do we mitigate risk, how we make everybody really comfortable with what's going on. And so the IF, we have a guarantee with the IF where they cover part of our default risk. And so it was like, when we raised that guarantee, it was okay. Then it allows us to unlock a facility of 30 million, which then obviously supports a lot of the company's growth through the cycle. But it was a lot of that. How can we understand the risks, mitigate the risks, to make sure that we can actually have a chance to scale the model? The other one was also the FCA guarantee, again, highly regulated space. And I think for people on our backgrounds, you're playing a lot with your beliefs on what is possible to be done. And this is on, you see, I cannot tell you the amount of people that I spoke with, great friends, smart people that tell me, Marta, it's impossible. You will not raise 30 million on the back of a book with no track record. You will not be authorized on a model that is completely unique without, again, having track record that you mitigate. And the fact is that you do. And so it's very liberating when you start really understanding that the blocks that we face a lot of times come from our beliefs on what is possible and what can be done. And you start deconstructing them, right? And I guess that's what we did at Cinefine. It's like, okay, what is blocking me from getting the funding to put this model in the market? Yeah. Is the default risk, and we having no idea. Okay, can I get a guarantee? Who can I get this from? I can get this from, obviously this is a big social problem. The IF is playing obviously on the education side and in Europe, which are the markets we're tackling. Okay, let's speak with the IF and get this. So it was a little bit on how do we go around the blocks, thinking big and around scalability.
In a way, it's almost you start having little aha moments as each time you break one of these Lego pieces and you deconstruct it and get there.
But then on the other side, because this is like me and my how I overcome my limitations. I think it's more personal than anything. But on the other side, like what we're proudest of, it's obviously helping people make huge life transitions. And we have like so the average income uplift in our portfolio is like 154 or one, which is okay. So people after taking the course are earning 1.54 times what they were earning before. Like we're talking about big financial uplifts in a very short period of time, giving people and a lot of the ISA users are kind of the underdogs, so people that would not have financial resources at all to make these life transitions, and the risk that obviously is involved in you pursuing a completely different field of study and career. And so the proudest moment, and we tell this all the time, if we had helped one person, this would have already been amazing, right? But we do see very big, deep transformations in people's lives and income power. And that is, I think, what really drives us to this at the end of the day.
And that leads me quite well to the next question, right? Because obviously there was always an element of you were building a business that was scalable, but there was also a strong social impact that you're trying to achieve and that you've just touched upon. And I mentioned a little bit the model in the introduction, but it's this combination of the upskilling and the actually financing of people that wouldn't have been able to get out of it that makes this a very impactful business, both from a financial but from a social perspective. But when you grow a business and people have a lot of this myth that to do one, you have to sacrifice the other, how have you balanced growing the business in a financially profitable manner with ensuring that it actually still remains accessible and impactful for the people that you're trying to help?
I think the answer for that was that this was, so impact is absolutely foundational for us. It's not we're building a business and, oh, how can we create impact? Is that we build the business logic in a way that if we grow, we are creating impact, right?
Yeah.
And so the way to do it is from foundation. So the income share, we started with the model that was the income share agreement, whereby for us to succeed, i.e. for us to continue growing a book where we are lending to people to take these courses, they are getting very strong financial uplifts. They are being employed. They are getting advancements in their career, right? So it's a business model construction, right? It's not an add-on to a business model, right? We need to still make sure that obviously, and I think we learned a lot and we've refined a lot the business as we grew, right? So you first you start learning, okay, what can we charge? What does make sense? How can we actually support them getting faster into jobs? How do we accelerate? But you need to line up the incentives. So good for us means good for our client and for the user. But you see, we started the income sharing agreement model, but now we're actually expanding a lot into to upskilling as well. And that goes in that continuous search for impact. So it was like, okay, serving the underdog, like the person who really has not access, was certainly, I would say, the biggest blocker when we start, like on the past decade. Again, what was lacking in the market was engineering firepower. How can we make sure that we are allowing these people to make these career transitions? But today, we're living through a very different macro cycle, very different transition with AI, right? And so we are growing the business and our vision. So impact for us now is also how can we make sure that everyone on the workforce is having access to upskilling, really realizing that we all need to upskill, we all need to reskill, particularly in the era of AI. And this is not an option. This is not a nice to have. This is not only for the people who are having really underpaid, undervalued jobs. We are living through a cycle where the tools and the skills are massively changing. And we are still in a moment in the world where people can get away with their old way of
just
operating.
Barely.
Well, you see, companies now talk about AI. Yeah, what people are doing is still being mostly led by obviously tech companies, scale-ups, startups starting to operate. But if you look at like a core foundation of the labor market, a lot of companies are still operating the same old way. But I think the big difference with this cycle is that it will be faster. than I think
Hmm.
we've ever seen
Yeah.
before. And we need to make sure that, again, for us, is we are building the infrastructure. So when people realize that not working with AI is like not working with a computer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you cannot like you will not want to be the company or the team that is not working with a computer.
Yeah. That's
Um,
still using fax machines.
and that is just like a really good parallel that we are here to support that transition and scale fast when that time comes. This is still not something that we are, it's like, it's understood at scale, but we believe that in the coming years, it will certainly help. And so we are transitioning a lot into AI and understanding that not upskilling into AI or not getting AI foundational knowledge will create a huge social problem down the line, right? And so we are, I think, thinking a couple of maybe 1 year, 2 years ahead of kind of really mainstream future of work
Yeah.
trends, to make sure that everything is ready for when the time comes and we can support a lot of people. Because you see, now it's not the underdog, it's everyone. It's from the CEO to the intern.
Yeah,
It's
no, and I'm glad you bring the AI topic up because you can't really talk about business today without talking about AI. And so you're speaking about this upskilling outside and how you are supporting that transition in the market. What about it in your business? How what role does AI take? Because I know you have a fair amount of AI that that again was maybe at the core foundation. And what do you see it as the opportunities that it may bring to your business or not?
so actually we've gone last year through a big transition, um, where we kind of really started reflecting on where the world is going, all of these kind of big trends that are taking place, and how we were not operating by best-in-class AI standards and tools. Right? We
Hmm.
were using AI, but not like across the board, every function, everyone thinking in kind of those terms. So we took, I would say, maybe an aggressive position. So kind of we really defined that we wanted to be an AI first company with an AI first culture. And everyone in our company took foundational AI training. And this means from operations, marketing, sales, C-levels, engineering team, etc., right? And product. So how can we really start operating in a very different way? And that is the thing with AI, is that AI embeds a very different way of operating.
Yeah.
And we need to, you need to frame things in a different perspective. What we can achieve and what we can build with less resources is absolutely outstanding. And I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit, it's a little bit addictive when you start
It's actually quite
getting
addictive.
used to it, because like, oh, like when you start doing stuff like, oh my God, I'm doing this, by myself, the amount of things that, but it's automation, but also on the product side. So what
Oh,
we
it's
can
on the
create,
creativity side, it's on the
it's
analytical side.
absolutely,
It's I think we're way beyond automation at this point. I
absolutely.
make a point of playing a little bit every day. And it is a bit addictive,
It's
right? Because at some point you're like, oh, I could just ask ChatGPT or I could just see if there's an AI for this and
but
and and do that.
it does take you to very different depth and
Yeah.
quality of work, right? Because you have someone who you can refine it with. And I think the starting point is already very different when you start using AI, but also the end point is completely different because you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper in the level of output that you get. Because at the end of the day, you can have a coach, a colleague, but even a lot of times I can have an opinion. Imagine that I'm reviewing part of our product. I can actually deliver the feedback in code. I don't know how to code, but I do this now. This is something that actually I do, and that is a completely game changer, right? I'm not only, I interact with obviously AI. I give the context of our product, the existing code, etc. I can make iterations, and I can say, like, team, this is my feedback. This is my kind of opinions or suggestions. Here would be the code
The code
updates
that
for
goes
parts
with
of that,
it.
which is like pretty incredible. And I think you start feeling like, okay, we can, and the speed, right? This
Yeah.
leads to a completely different speed of testing product, putting things on the market. Like really the iteration is completely different. But so we went through that process of making sure that every team, every department was using it. We started kind of defragmenting a little bit. So obviously AI training for everyone, foundations to non-technical, to technical, obviously taking things to a deeper level. But a lot of times we had to say, like, for non-technical, it was like, I don't care what you start with. You can use it to build the grocery store or to, but bring something that you've done with AI, right? To really, because people are afraid of change. People are afraid. A lot of time, what we hear, and I hear this recurrently, is I don't have time for this. Like, I'm very busy. I don't have time for this. Actually, something that is emerging quite clearly. I'm having a lot of conversations with VPs of and directors and people that are really best in class in their field and leading companies, tier 1 companies, and they tell me, like, I'm realizing that I'm already not keeping up with the emerging tools in the market by this, but I don't have bandwidth. I'm completely overwhelmed with my core function and I don't have time for this. And so this is something that we need to fix. We need to make time for this, like all of us, like, and what you're saying, you need to play with it every day for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It will become more and more natural. And when you realize it, you're already operating or working in a very different way. But it's very important that we remove the resistance and just start playing with it, start using it for.
Yeah, but I think you bring two very fair points, right? You have the resistance part where people are kind of wondering, oh, do I really want to do this? Am I going to be out of a job? Which hopefully, culture does a little bit of its thing in reassuring people that it's actually an upskilling. But you do have the overwhelming point, and I really resonate with that because so when I left Morgan Stanley, it was July 23, and all this hype had been going on. And I remember once or twice someone telling me, oh, I did this thing on ChatGPT. And I was like, you know what? I can't cope with what you're telling me. I have it installed. I have it open. But I also, obviously, there were all sorts of limitations. So I couldn't use it for anything work related at the time. But I couldn't even cope with personal usage. And the day after I left, I attended a talk actually in Harvard about it. And I said, this is it. Like, it starts today. And I haven't stopped. And actually the small podcast I was telling you that I launched at the end of the year it's a 10-minute stint of here's what I tried this week. Here's what I tried this week. And it's personal one week, business another one, just to get people in oh, maybe I could use it for that. Maybe. And it's been very random. And, whenever I'm using for something random, I write down on my paper, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use it for that one. And I think it's that change of culture of changing the way we think that I think it's right. But anyway, I think we could be here all day talking about AI because we're clearly big fans. But I wanted to kind of maybe wrap up the business angle with what is your vision for social finance and how are you pursuing it?
And so we really want to have a role in the future of work and support people go through this transition. Our vision is to empower everyone to have the tools and knowledge and training and access to really be the best versions of themselves. But also then, I would say the financial side that comes associated with that, like the financial uplift that comes, but also the freedom side, right? It's very empowering, very liberating. And what we realize, again, when your business is built around big social problems, and I think that is what we are lucky to be doing here.
Yeah.
Again, the impact is a natural product of us doing a good job, right? Because it's not that we're forcing a place into the market, it's that people need to reskill, people need to upskill.
Yeah.
So what we need to continuously do is not be attached to the how or to the what, you see. So we started with, okay, we need to create more engineers to the labor market. And now is potentially, I think the next decade is a lot more around how can we help people transition to an AI first world in the labor market, and more the personal human skills that need to be developed in parallel to obviously grasping these tools. But it's important that we're not attached to that, because we need to follow where kind of the big world trends and where the world is going. So we always try to play an infrastructure layer on top of, again, the best training that is happening to the market, making sure that we help people in, I would say, two core verticals, helping them understand what they ought to be reskilling, upskilling into, right? And for that, for instance, we have recently launched, I would say, two core things for individual users: a career co-pilot, where we design career paths completely and with concrete training recommendations for your specific profile, but then also for companies that is helping you assess, okay, within your team composition, what are the core emerging skills and how you can guide on a team basis that these skills are being kind of acquired and taken into consideration. I say that on, okay, people knowing what they ought to be studying. And then it's removing all of the financial friction for people to do it, right? And we have been evolving, because we also realized, so we started with income share agreements. We also have interest-free payment in installments, because obviously everyone in the upskilling side, a lot of these people are employed. We don't want people to need to lose jobs or take aggressive leaves from the labor market to go and train and re-enter the labor market. This done well is people are reskilling and upskilling within
The labor market.
within the labor market, within their companies, within their roles. And so again, we created a financial product that allows for that, but we're also tapping a lot now into, I would say, two big bolts of funding, which is government funding allocated to education. And a lot of, there are, when you see across the board, but this is Europe, US, etc., there are billions of unutilized funding to education. Why? Because governments make it too complex to access, to know the eligibility, to understand it. But so that's something that we are launching very soon. And then on the other side, there are also tax benefits for the individual users. So you can deduct this cost from your taxable income. At the end of the day, you are having a lot of advantages by lowering your tax base to use it. And so our question is, how can we optimize all of the funding stacks that exist for education, knowing that this is a big social problem? More and more money will need to come and be thrown at the problem. If it's government money, free money, amazing. If it's your company supporting, amazing. If you need to pay for it, amazing, right? And we stack these or kind of we bundle these payment options to make sure that nobody is facing a funding barrier to have an upskilling opportunity or reskilling opportunity.
And I'm looking forward to a world where financial friction is not limiting of freedom, I guess. So let's just take a bit of a reflection moment and look at the executive, right? Marta, the executive. What, looking through your career, what do you think was similar across the different stages? Kind of a bit of a common line in the way you work.
I'm used to working with a lot of autonomy and focused on outcomes, obviously on a, I would say, people-centric approach of giving people a lot of liberty to bring themselves and their best selves to work. I definitely think that we generically fail in the labor market. This, right? We hire people for their super skills, but then we try to put them in boxes and limit a lot how they operate. We're telling them. So I think that is a personal trend, but I've been trying to go deeper and deeper. I've been, I think, studying a lot and creating more space is even for how teams are. So student finance is a remote first company. There are benefits and there are, things that are not optimal with the remote first work. But what I believe, what I love about it is that it allows for a better blend of you coming completely whole to your job, right? I think we inherited a way of work that is from the industrial age. Nobody thought or stopped to think about, does this make any sense? In the sense that why is it 9 to 5? Why? Why? And that works for some people and some profiles, but certainly not for everyone. It's like, for me and for my team, I want people to be working at that optimal times. If they like to work at night, amazing. Obviously, we have meetings and we have building blocks and but we need to, first of all, really reflect and understand, how do we optimize our individual performance? Really openly talk about this, so then we can, as a team, say, blend this. Okay, I'm better at this time. I'm better at this time. Okay, how can we combine this? But I think there is a big lack of even reflection and self-knowledge of individual people on what optimizes my work, my output. And so I really don't like to talk about hours, times, etc. I really like to think about what works best for us to deliver this. For instance, I work a lot in projects, and my energy is very project centric. And having these reflections really completely change how I even set up my agenda. The blocks, what I protect, what I make time for, how I organize my day. And I think that has a huge impact on the output and productivity. But then also we need to be conscious of the overall thing. So I have 4 kids. I have a 1-year-old baby. Like, for instance, through the last year, night periods were very hard. I'm purely exhausted at that time of the day, right? But understanding how I work best, but then also, okay, what is the context? But I think this makes me flexible with my teams, right? So understanding this self-reflection, I think, then mirrors what we do in others, right? And really understanding what is the context, how people operate, what is optimal for them, etc.
We've gone the common line, and also I think you've pretty much started defining the characteristics that define you as a leader, which was something always I like to for people to reflect on. And I clearly you've done a lot of work on that self-reflection already. So maybe let's talk about looking back. Maybe what was one of the biggest lessons you've taken out of building this mission-driven organization and through the years and through the different changes in the future of work that is now here, present, not future anymore. What was your biggest lesson, would you say?
The biggest lesson that I learned, I think, by far, is that our limitations are created by our beliefs on what we can achieve. This is,
Yeah.
We are raised in obviously an education system, in a professional work, where we are used to be told this is how things work. And I think we need to understand, like, for instance, when you work in an investment bank, you're not there to change how that machine works, right? You're there to perform your best, the best within that, obviously, environment. You're not there to say, oh, no, I'm going to do M&A in a completely different way. No, you're not, right? That's how we do things around here. And that's how, but for me, it was very liberating to come and to grow now into a space where I realize that, again, those constructions, those mental models, those ways of operating were designed for that institution. Amazing. The people that created it defined that, but that we can, I'm the architect in the sense that I can define this, I can set it up. And even when things, for instance, what we were mentioning before on kind of the shift to AI first culture that we had last year, that I hold the pencil in saying, we've been doing things this way, but now the world changed, I changed, my view of the world changed, and I want to operate. I know that best in class now is done in a different way. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to execute this. I'm going to lead my team into operating into different world. And there is nothing blocking me doing it.
Yeah.
So there is really a freedom of impact and of how you want to operate that I think comes with entrepreneurship. But I think in the new model of companies, right? I think it's really about what we aim to achieve and how we propose ourselves to get there. But you realize that there are not impossibles, right? What people will tell me, you will not raise 50 million with no track record. You will not, you will. You can, right? It's just a matter of course, you will hear a million no's.
Yeah.
That's fine, right? But so getting inside that, very strong foundation of why we want to build this company, being connected to always what is the best way to do this, and keep iterating that and changing that, because I think that is the beauty of being in this position, right? I can actually do this. I can change. I can restart. I can improve. And also for us, it was very important to role model also to work, because you see, we're a company that we're doing reskilling, upskilling, and we went through that.
And you have to do it as well.
And then you have to do it, right? Because this time of the world, this moment is requiring every one of us to do it. And going through that process of, okay, now we need to go through the pain and we need to really role model to the other companies what we are proposing them to do, was also very fun and very humbling and very, taking you to obviously back to the core of the mission and why we believe this is important.
So Marta, what does a good day look like for you?
A good day has exercise for sure. So I think we obviously deal with a lot of stress, changes, pressure around this. So exercise is a crucial part of my day. But also meditation, journaling, reading, then some blocks of, I would say, deep work. So I try to organize my day at least to have one block of 3 hours for concrete projects, so they're not jumping, and then a part of the day that I'm obviously available for the team, for calls, etc. But I really like to have a part of the day that I feel that I'm progressing on those kind of build blocks and projects that we need to push through. And then family time, for sure. That's something that I'm also growing more and more into. So I try to pick up my kids from school several times per week. So like, but I've assumed this. Like when I was working back at Credit Suisse, for me that was like waste time. I'm not going to be, the driver. I don't care. I don't think this is important. Blah blah. Fast forward some years today, it's super important. It's something that I have on my agenda. It doesn't ruin my day. I love it. I'm there with them for that time. I get that kind of moment and tick the energy from being with my family. Then I go back to my work, etc. So it's more about how I protect and blend all of these pieces together. But certainly I grow a lot and change, but I try to adapt that. You see, like now I feel this is what works. Then not like now we are fully remote. Maybe in a couple of years I'm saying I want to go to the office and this is really what I miss. We need to keep evolving and having that, I would say, curiosity and adaptation mindset continuously.
No, clearly this is the Make Space for Growth podcast at the end, and clearly you make space along the way for different things, and different things become important along the way. And you've it's in London. There was not even a chance I would pick up my kids from school, because at the end of the day they finished school at 3 o'clock anyway, and so I'm like halfway through my day at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
But it's evolved, right? And it's now, especially, my daughter is older, and so a lot of the conversations and those births, they come out at that time, and so you also evolve in your priorities. So we've done a fair amount of reflection here. What advice would you give to the Marta starting her career?
Follow your interests, because I think that is the common line that I think led me to here, but certainly will lead me to whatever I will continue doing in the future. Because I think when we do things from a place of genuine interest and curiosity and following what we are deeply connected to somehow, it doesn't matter what the project is, how it materializes around. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a podcast, if it's, it just starts building things, and it will go to a place where you are really, I would say, fulfilled, because we are doing something that I think we all want to have impact, to have connection, to be working to build a better world, to help others, etc. And I think if we follow these passions, we will at the end of the day always feel that, right? Whatever it turns out to be, the journey, if it's that, the company worked, the company didn't work, the postcard was, blah, but if you're going from that place, you're always learning something and building something to the next place. So, just trust and follow that interest, but also think from a place of enhanced curiosity. And because I think we are, when we are young, we are trying a lot to play other people's games, right? We are, which I think we need to learn. We learn by seeing how others operate, right? We see, but there is one point in time that you need to realize, yeah, but this is me, this is my game, and unlock unlock your creativity, unlock your way of doing things. And so also I think that has been important in certainly in my journey and growth.
So let me close us up with 3 firing round questions. Do you have a book recommendation that you want to share?
The one that I will recommend now, it's a book that massively impacted me, not necessarily my favorite book of all times, but something that it's called The Surrender Experiment. It is around how we need to live life in flow and let go of our need to control everything. And I think for people like us, eventually that is a lesson.
Need to read that book.
No, eventually and this is a lesson we need to learn, right? And I think, and it has been leading me to, I would say, a big journey of going more from that masculine energy of knowing, controlling, having the plan, blah, blah, to really moving into a lot more kind of this feminine side of going with, if this is right for me within my energy. So doing things from the right place, but trusting, really trusting that things work out, that the right thing will happen, that we don't need to be in control or in that really masculine controlling energy all the time, which I think we were brought up to obviously to do, right? To have the deal, to have the plan, to have the pipeline, to have that. Remember, it's important to have a plan, but I'm learning to also go and resurrect a lot that side of lightness, flow, and that a lot of growth but even for the business, right? That a lot of growth and alignment can happen from going to a place of, okay, I'm trusting also the path, and I'm going with the flow. And so do read it. And for me to say, because I think it was a big mindset shift that I had when I read it.
I can imagine, particularly if you read it in COVID, that it would have been,
Yeah.
even more appropriate, like the time that we can't control anything in our lives.
Yeah.
Do you have a quote that particularly inspires you?
When you're offered a place in a rocket ship, don't ask which which seat. You just go in, and I think that is important because a lot of us, we go to mental, to is this right? Is the right thing? And I think it embodies a little bit what we are talking around here. It's just if it feels right, if the opportunity is right, if it's inspiring, if you're go. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be perfect to make the perfect sense. I think we need to go back to more of that intuition and back to interest, and then things will work out, because we are too mental as a society. But I think our generation was definitely brought up to be too mental, right? I think the learning is and the quote, and it has certainly been something very important in my journey. You see, when if I go back to when we started student finance, it was, again, let's do this. It didn't really matter. It still doesn't matter for me what is the role at all. I don't care. I want to help. I want to have an impact. I want to be on this journey. And so I think we would create a lot more things if we go to that place.
Last question. Do you have a word of the year for 2025?
Last year, it was a year of going very inward for me and for the business. And so it was very, okay, let's look at the foundations. Let's look at where the world is going. Let's look at, and 2025, I think I'm more in the energy of maybe I will say freedom. And freedom, I will connect this to what I've been saying, like freedom to now put kind of this next level of business into the world and to put it in the hands of the people and see what freedom they would actually get out of their upskilling journeys. But it's kind of putting this out on the world and let it
It all connects together.
It does,
These last three questions. Thank you so much for being part of the Make Space for Growth podcast. It was great to have you, and hopefully everyone gets a lot to learn and finds a little bit more flow.
Yeah, hopefully we need it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah.
I was delighted to have Marta start us off in this new season of the podcast. The difficult part was to finish our call after we hit pause on the recording. We have many common passions, and we are both passionate about the transformation that is occurring in the world. Listening to Marta's story gave me one bit of extra conviction that businesses have a major role in growing the pie and creating positive impact in the society by construct, where profits and impact are perfectly aligned. It also demonstrates how a strong start in large financial institutions has a lot of common factors with entrepreneurship and offers an excellent foundation to excel as a founder. What were your favorite parts of the podcast? Share your comments and lessons, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thank you for listening to the Make Space for Growth podcast. And until we meet again, I get to do this.